Well, hello friends, we're doing a little bit different location today. So I live right over there. You can kind of see some of my trees over there. I'm at my mom's house, what I call the main farm, where I grew up. More of the generational farmhouse. Later on in their lives, my grandparents lived in the house I live in, and then my parents switched, and they lived here when I was growing up, my mom and dad obviously, and my sister and me, and grandma and grandpa lived over across the road. So I'm over here because we're gonna go work in the orchard here in a little bit, but I thought on the way we could do a quick tour. I'll be doing more tours here later on as more things are happening. I don't have everything planted yet in containers. I don't have all the agave in, but I thought we could start up here by the house. I love Mom's front porch. It faces north, has Boston ferns always since I was little growing up. I recently planted some beautiful batwing begonias in the 2 urns in front of the front porch with the diamond frost euphorbia, just to add some color. You know, the north side is hard, but I planted Japanese forest grass here. It's probably been 10 years ago now, and it does amazing up here. It gets full and beautiful. Bobo hydrangeas, because they get some good afternoon sun, even for the north side, and some beautiful boxwood mixed in, so over the winter there's structure. I really love her front. It's really, for a north side, I think we're quite lucky on what works. But we're gonna head on down towards the orchard and go through the east lawn. We planted that now 2 years ago, if you remember, Mom and I, a new flower bed over there, and we're gonna kind of look at some items on the way to the orchard. So as we cross, her house is behind me. These urns going down, I put agave in. I have not done that yet. They will be getting them though. I kind of want to rehab these squares eventually. Maybe kind of I don't know. I'm not sure what I want to do, just at some point, a little bit different. The Celebration Maple have been in now 6 years, and they are looking beautiful. They started off probably 8 to 12 foot tall, and they are well over 16 foot at this point, if not 20 foot. So they're gonna have a nice upright form and offer a really nice kind of walkway down towards the orchard, which is where those columns are. But over here is the garden Mom and I planted a few years ago, kind of around Mother's Day. Now, eventually it's gonna hide these electrical boxes. It's gonna hide a few things that we can't get rid of, obviously. I did extend it this year, which I don't have all the sod out yet, but there is a manhole cover for water right there. That will be in the flower bed now. I put a couple Technique arborvitaes that don't look good, but they did overwinter and there is green on them. So we're gonna say they're gonna live. But I'm gonna extend this flower bed over into here. But if you remember, we planted it with lots of fun things. So there's a Chinese fringe tree. Behind it, limelight hydrangeas just to cover up those boxes. Eventually all that will get big enough that you won't see the boxes. But then there's a mix of penstemon. There is the big blue orangium. I love that. It doesn't always come back the best for me, but I have some plants this year that are finally coming back. Some Hamlin grass, which I know for some of you can be invasive. Here in Iowa, that's not the case. That's something to watch out for though. And maybe I would pick a different grass now. Liatris, which reseeds, but I like that. I like it just to fill in. You can see there's lots of seedlings of Liatris back there. Carl Forster grass, there is Caradonna salvia, penstemon again, there is Goldstrom rudbeckia. You know, all that is gonna be repeating down. So right now everything is just kind of coming out, and I have not edged this bed since we put it in. So this will be the year that it's time to edge the bed. Usually every other year, every 3 years, it just kind of depends. But what I did this year, instead of using a push mower, I took the big rider mower because there was nothing really obstructing it. And because it has a mulching part to it too, I drove over this whole thing and just mulched it all with the big rider. And it did beautifully. It's coming back now really well. Within a month, this is going to just be a sea of color. That's really a bed that's a lot similar to the one along my pathway. It has a few different mix of items in it, but it works really the same way. So the reason I put big beds like that in is it offers huge impact of color because it has big mass plantings of color, but little work. So Mom really does nothing to this bed. I mowed over it, like I said, which took me with the rider 5 minutes. If I would have had to push it, could have taken, 15 minutes depending. But that was all I had to do. And now, other than watching for weeding, which honestly after the first year isn't too bad because everything grows in so well, it kind of takes care of itself. Here at the end is a row of green mountain boxwood, which I put in 2016, I believe. You can find that video on YouTube, and you can see they were all 1 or 2 gallon size at the time. They are growing in so well. They offer a really nice hedge down here. And these are 2 architectural salvage pieces that I use as columns. They were on a facade of a building, so the back half does not look like the front half, but they're just, to me, gorgeous, and they kind of feel like there could have been old gates here. When I design areas of a yard, especially here where we have farms now that are pretty old, I like to do it in a way that makes it feel like it could have been here, could be a story to tell. This is the first year that I have these concrete compotes or kind of fruit compotes up on top. Found these at an antique show, and instead of having agave up there in containers, I decided to do these. They've been there all winter, they look good year round. It's just kind of a nice reprieve, and especially against those Taylor juniper. So we can't do Italian cypress here, but we can do Taylor juniper, and I love the upright height of them. There's one in the corner I planted later, so it really offers this pillar effect. Going down to the orchard where you see that cast iron column that's antique, I put that up as a sculpture. There's an urn that I'll plant with an agave, and I'm redoing some benches down here, kind of rearranging them, so that's why they're right there. I'll step over these benches, but what I love is that this area just leads you right out into the orchard, which sometimes an orchard is an afterthought. We used to have one back behind kind of the house and the shop, and it was really old. It was one my great-grandparents had somewhat had, and my grandparents, and over the years, the trees had either gotten some diseases, some of them, or blown over in storms, so it was time to start a new one. About 2015 is when I started this. And almost all the trees I'm gonna show you down here in the orchard they're all semi-dwarf, but they were all mostly started from whips. There are a few ones, and we'll talk about that, like we're gonna plant today, that are not whips. Whips are trees that come really looking like a stick. They're about maybe 3 to 4 foot tall. And what I like about them is you can usually find more heirloom varieties like that, but also you can trim and shape them into whatever you want. So we just walked through into down here. There's a big perennial border on both sides, and it has full of peonies and some boxwood, and you can see actually some of the peonies are just beginning to open. I mean, look at that Ito peony. Ito are my favorite. There's lots of blooms on it. It's just beginning. There's also lots of herbaceous peonies. There's ornamental rhubarb, one of my favorite plants, very hard to find. I was redoing benches, like I said, so this one I'm going to level out an area. I'm gonna have I have 2 of these that match, get them painted, and set them here to kind of look out. Mom actually likes to have benches in various places when she's working in the garden, so this is a great spot for it. But this is a mix of kind of a cottage garden, but then it has some structure with repeating boxwood and peonies. But it looks out into the orchard, which now after, over 10 years these trees being planted, they're finally getting some great size. So like I said, 10 years ago, this was a stick. And now I have shaped it into a beautiful open vase tree, which is how I like to do mine. Last year we had a big bumper crop of fruit, kind of all fruit did really well last year. So while there is definitely fruit on here this year, you can see beautiful apples. Oh, that one has a really good mix of apples up in there. Do you see all those? There's not as many, I can tell, as last year, which is very traditional. If you have a bumper crop one year, you won't have as many the next. But we are still gonna have definitely some. Just, you have heavy fruiting years and less, because trees need to readjust. We also had a late frost this year, and I do think that probably, you can see some there though, that probably definitely affected them. So what we have are mostly, I want to say I have about 50% apples, because we use a lot of apples, and there are a lot of heirloom varieties from Wine Sap, Jonna Gold, to anything like Honey Crisp and Yellow Transparent, my favorite for, early Yellow Transparent, I should say, is my favorite for applesauce. A lot of these are hard to find, so when I found them years ago, which a nursery is now out of business, I looked for varieties that were older, heirloom varieties. Those aren't always the best for disease resistance though, so I don't have major disease issues. What I have is Japanese beetles, and those get to the trees pretty hard on certain years. So I keep trying different things and I can't find the perfect thing, but there are also pears, cherries. We're gonna replace a cherry today. There right now are 2 peaches. We're gonna put in a 3rd peach today. There's some apricots, and remember with all fruit trees, it depends on the tree. Cherries usually are self-fertile, meaning they can fruit on their own, but even self-fertile trees do better with another cherry tree. A lot of apples though need different types of pollinators, cross-pollinators, to make sure they flower, and when they flower that they actually bear fruit. So if you don't have sometimes the right mixture of trees, you won't have fruit. They'll flower, but you'll have no fruit. So that's the important thing to remember, and you can look at charts online because that's really important to know. And you want to know what tree goes with what to make sure you have fruit. When you're going to pick out fruit trees, I always think the important thing is to obviously know your area, just like any plant. You want to know your growing zone. I'm in zone 5B in Iowa, and just recently I was at a coffee shop actually, and I was talking to the barista, and I was saying I'm gonna plant some fruit trees, and she asked what type, and I was saying a peach, and she said, we can grow peaches in Iowa? You can, you just have to pick the right one. So traditionally what I would plant is a Contender or a Reliance. Those are my favorites here usually. But I couldn't find those this year. So I went to my nursery, my local nursery, and I'm getting a Bailey Hardy peach. Now, this is a new to me peach tree, which, I'm always up for trying something new. It's zoned really well. Peaches in general can be sometimes a harder tree because they can be a little bit weaker, it feels like, than other trees. They can be really susceptible to, if they get damaged, they get a lot of sap issues that kind of bleed out. So they can be a weaker tree. That's why I always like to have multiple. I have 2 that have been doing well. I'm putting a 3rd in. You always kind of want to have a little bit of insurance and hedge anything that could happen. But what I'm doing here first, there was a tree here. It passed away. I think last year it got hit with something, honestly, and then didn't do as well. So it kind of seemed to struggle early in the season last year. And then when they struggle, it got some pest issues and it just didn't do well. So my soil out here is kind of a mix. It's well draining, which is important. It has some nice loamy qualities to it. It holds on to moisture somewhat, but during dry spells, definitely need to watch it and kind of water as needed. But the hole here was somewhat easier to dig because I had a tree here. We have 3 trees to plant today. So this first one here I'm gonna get in the ground, and I'm gonna go through some of it that I'm gonna show you deeper on the next trees. So on this first one here, what I want you to know is, I have it so that graft is out of the ground. Now, if you're saying what's a graft, fruit trees, almost all of them we buy anymore are called semi-dwarf, meaning we want them to stay a little bit shorter because a tree on its own can get really big, right? So this is a peach tree, and you can see there's a graft. And what this does is it takes a peach tree and it grafts it onto smaller root stock to make it a semi-dwarf tree. So that root stock is going to keep the tree from getting too big. The important thing with this is to make sure this graft is out of the ground, well out of the ground, and you want to expose the root flare, which I can show you on another tree too. But that root flare, I had to take some soil off the top. Do you see how it starts flaring out into its roots? You want that to sit right at ground level. If that gets too deep into the ground, it's going to suffocate the tree. Its roots are going to want to start encircling upwards, trying to get oxygen, which can slowly strangle the tree over time. So getting that the right height, removing what you need to expose those items, is going to give you a much longer life of the tree. Then the essential part is obviously backfilling the hole. So, down here, I'll show you the amendments I used here on the next tree. I think it's always good, depending on your soil, you can always amend up to 50% with a compost if you want to add good organic matter or help lighten the soil. All those are going to obviously work. You can also amend with, I don't necessarily usually amend just with topsoil because it doesn't really add any nutrients or organic matter unless you feel like you're planting, if you have to amend with topsoil, I would say you probably shouldn't be planting maybe a fruit tree there. But you can definitely amend then with other good organic fertilizers, which I'll show you. I always do biotone. I'm doing tree tone on these fruit trees, which I also supplementally give them every year. After planting, obviously watering is key here, but I also want to make sure I stake it. Now I had this in the ground, the post from before, so I'm gonna, at the moment, just use the one I had. I may have to adjust it later, but so tonight, we're supposed to have a ton of wind and tomorrow. And I really don't want to have this tree blow over right after, because not that it wouldn't live, but I will adjust this so it goes out a little bit. But the problem is if a tree happens like the day after to blow over and you don't realize it, that wind will also just completely dry out any of the roots. And that can actually detrimentally really hurt it within no time at all. The next tree we're planting is a Luscious pear. I love the name. Pears, I don't know, for me, I haven't found the perfect fruiting pear yet here. I have some that I get some fruit from, but not near as much as I would like. I would like a lot more fruit. So I'm hoping, when I was reading about Luscious pear, it should be a decent one. Obviously that's gonna take a few years to get there. It won't happen in the first year. This soil is decent other than at one time, there was a livestock building here. And probably 15 years ago, we took it down. So there are areas of this where they dug down deep enough that you do get a little bit of clay, which usually I never hit, or in this case, I feel like I'm hitting a rock, possibly still from that. So I want to dig that out. There we go. So it's probably a piece of what looks like an old concrete foundation when they were taking it out. So I don't like things like that under my trees if I can help it. So now I want to show you a few things. First, I'm going to show you this tree already. I don't really need to take a lot off of it. You can tell this one's a little bit of a larger tree. The graft is actually much more healed at this point, which I like. So let's take it out of here so I can show you. On this one, you can see the root flare pretty much already. See how you see where it's flaring out and going into the soil itself? That's perfect. So I don't need to worry about taking anything off the top of this one. It's pretty much ready to go. What I do need to worry about are these tight roots all the way around. You can see they're tight, circling. And what I don't like about that is roots can have a memory where they start encircling so tightly, they don't always know how to branch out on their own and start going into the native soil. So I like to help them by taking my spade and giving it relief cuts. And what this does is it kind of starts opening up those roots a little bit and wanting them to branch out. Now, this looks scary because yeah, it's going to stress those roots a little bit, but never to the point where you notice any damage on the tree. What it does is, and I've been doing this with everything I've planted my whole life, it really does open them up and help them to want to go out laterally, which is really the point. You want lateral growth on those roots. You don't want them to encircle themselves, which actually over time can really not get good watering then if they don't soak it up, and it really can strangle them. So now you can see this is really opened up. Those roots are going to want to branch out better. And I'm going to amend. So the first thing I always do is spill my biotone, anything I plant. It's going to give it more of a starter fertilizer. It's going to help that get acclimated to my native soil. It's also going to, though, not burn it. It's not going to be synthetic. It's going to help the soil. It's going to help the roots. It's a win-win. And then I always like to do a mixture of tree tone. So tree tone, I like to put on all my fruit trees anyway. It works well on most shade trees. It's a slow release fertilizer that's really going to help the tree over the season and seasons to come by building soil health. Then I make sure my depth is correct. That's just about perfect. Since that root flare was already showing, which let me bring you down so you can see it. Since this root flare was already showing, my soil level already is going to be at the right size. That's perfect to backfill and then water. I'm finishing up with a Northstar cherry. For pie or sour cherries, I like Montmorency and Northstar. They've always done well here and they're my favorite cherry. And I like to have one of both. I think having two trees helps have more fruit, but I also like the mixture of those two varieties. Northstar can be a little bit darker cherry. Maybe you could say sweeter, but they're both sour cherries. This one did not need to have the roots cut at all. It had nice loose roots already. It was probably a younger tree. Its flare was already showing. The graft is exposed. All that is essential and important. So the key to these will be keeping them watered, obviously, keeping them staked so they don't fall over. And then later on this summer, July into August, and it kind of seems never ending sometimes, Japanese beetles. The younger the tree, the more they can damage. Older trees, they'll eat on them. They could even get to the fruit, but they won't usually kill the tree. Younger trees, if they eat the leaves too much, they're so young they don't have quite what they need to survive as well. So it's something to watch. Now, if you notice around this tree, about half of the trees so far, so I think about 16 trees? No, 10 trees. 10 trees so far, I have edged and put Walker's Low catmint. It was too big in another area I had in the yard here. And so I have been bringing it all and putting it around trees that I edge. I saw the idea once, and what I love is catmint brings so many pollinators, great for fruit trees. It also is going to just help kind of cover the soil here so it's not exposed and just offer something really pretty out in the orchard. So we have Northstar cherry, that's the Montmorency, beautiful shape. We have the Luscious pear over there. We have that Bailey Hardy peach tree beside it. And then, so here you can see the edging I've been doing and then adding, it's small starts right now of the Walker's Low because I transplanted it kind of late, but already it's starting to grow in. And by mid-season, it's just gonna be full of blooms, beauty. It could be great if it would attract some type of natural predator to the Japanese beetle, but I doubt that. So we went over planting the fruit trees, making sure the graft is showing, making sure the root flare is showing, fertilizing them well and getting them started well, biotone, tree tone. They're off to a good start. I also love to put tree tone on all the established trees in the drip line around the tree yearly. I don't always get it done, but most years I do, and I do think it makes a huge difference. So let me know, as always, what questions you have, what you'd like to see covered more of, what maybe I missed or you wanted to see something that I didn't show. Tell me in the comments. I love to hear what you want to see more of. I'm checking my trees right now for how much fruit is on them. I see some early yellow transparent. That's good. Applesauce. Those are ready in July, late July. So let me know, and let me know what you're doing in your yard. Maybe what works for you in your orchard, things like that. I love to hear, so we can kind of all learn from each other, because that is half the fun of gardening, right? To learn from each other and get to know more, because it's all always learning. It's really just school. Gardening is just school. Have fun.